on the breeze, and I feel I'm falling like these leaves. I must be cornerstone. Oh, but when I reach that ground, I'll share this peace of mind I found. I can feel it in my bones, but it's gonna take a little time for me to set that parking brake and let myself unwind. Shine that light on me.
What's up, all you big timers out there? This is the Big Time Podcast. I'm here with a special guest, man. I mean, it's the Big Daddy, Jack. Big time Russo. Jack, dude, I really sincerely appreciate you sitting down and doing this. Thank you so much.
Oh
man.
my
How you
God,
doing?
Randall, it's such an honor being here. I watch your podcast. It helped me get back into wrestling, so I'm watching all the old clips.
Dude.
So when I told you that and you were like, bro, I want you on, I was honored. I was like, I gotta be on there. So seriously, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Nah, dude, that is so cool. I mean, that's so funny too because, so my brother and I, we started doing the podcast and it was just to have fun, right? This is not the podcast that we're doing now, but, and then I was like, man, if I could get one guy to like get back into wrestling, like that's cool, man. Because when I go to these shows, like wrestling shows, it's, dude, you feel, all together. You feel, no one's judging nobody. You're all in the same boat, right? You're all wrestling nerds. It's like, we're all in this together. So that's funny, man. That's cool. But yeah, I appreciate you sitting down and doing this. And what like got you back into wrestling per se? Like, did you watch it as a kid? And then how has it been going back and reliving some of those memories?
So, Randall, ever since I was a kid, I've loved WWE, right? So, like, with our age, it was sort of like the middle to the end of the Attitude Era. And then it was the Ruthless Aggression era, right? And then I don't know how you were, but when I was a kid, TNT started becoming like the temporary thing, right? Like Chris went there,
Yeah.
Kurt Angle went there. So I started watching that. And then I stopped watching when I was about 15 or 16. And then it was so funny because I went to law school and like two of my really good friends like loved WWE. So I started getting back into it slowly. And then your podcast came on and I was like, okay.
Dude, wrestling fans, even in law school, we got wrestling fans. Come
Totally.
on, man.
It's so like, it's really a perfect universe because it's like, I'm starting to slowly get back into it. I'm like, oh, the wrestling's cool. And then when I watch your podcast, I'm like, oh my God, there's so many stories and intricacies behind this. Like, it's not just wrestling. It's very theatrical.
Yeah.
They got characters and stories and like, I can't stop watching it since, I gotta tell you, the last year.
That's so funny, dude. So you're a real fan. I mean, you're Ruthless Aggression era, Attitude era, TNA. Yeah, man. You're not just a poser, dude. You're really
No,
in there.
and it's crazy too. Like I've been started like reviewing the TNA a little bit, right? Like and
Yeah.
it's just crazy. Or is it TNT? I'm sorry, but
TNA. It doesn't matter though. You're big time Jack Russo. It
so
doesn't
like
matter.
it's funny because like recently I go through phases, right? So like right now I'm watching Kurt Angle, right? Look at
Yeah.
his career, you're like, wow, he wasn't that big in the WWE for a long time, like 6-7 years, and then he was
Yeah.
on TNA for like 10.
Yeah. Yeah. That guy was crazy. I mean, he's an animal. He's still from what I hear. So to put that into perspective, a guy like Kurt Angle, I can't remember what procedure he just had done, but it was like a hip. He had his like hip done. And like a week later, he was out mowing the lawn.
Whoa!
Like he's just a different guy. Yeah, Olympic gold medalist, all that sort of thing. You kind of look like him actually. And dude, tell me just a little bit about your life growing up. I know you grew up in Honesdale. I've been there one time, but I will say that one time I left my mark there with Noah Box for the New Year's party or whatever we had. Tell me a little bit about Honesdale and growing up and kind of how you got into, because when we met, right, we met in college and you were big into the arts and theater. tell me how, you grew up and then kind of went that path.
Well, Randall, it's really funny because my whole life I like hated school, right? Small town Owensdale, there's nothing to do but hang out with your friends. I mean, you were there. I mean, the main street's like a mile, and that's it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
really small.
I'm a small town kid too, so I
No,
can relate.
totally. So really small town and stuff like that. So high school comes around and my dad's a doctor, right? So my dad goes, "I've been thinking you should go be an actor." And I was like, "Well, he's like, "You love movies and stuff like that. I think it's perfect." So I was like, "Yeah, I think that's great." So and then I started doing acting at this age, which and it's really
Yeah.
funny too because I remember junior and my sister's a lawyer, right? So I remember
Dude, you have a smart family.
oh no.
Jeez.
So I remember junior year coming around and I was like, wow, I'm like not that good at acting and I'm not getting casted in anything. So I was like, I better like come up with something here, right? So I took the LSAT, did terrible on it, and then I had to take a year off of college, right? And then pretty much I worked in a restaurant for a year, restudied for the LSAT, and I got accepted into Mississippi. And I was like, that sounds really different and that sounds really cool, Mississippi College. And I was like, I'll go there. And then that's what happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is unreal. I mean, you're always one of, I mean, I say one of, maybe the nicest dude I've ever met. And uh, the fact that um, had a path and then it kind of got derailed and then fairly quickly you took it upon yourself to like regain your momentum and now you're in Mississippi. That is unreal, dude. That takes a lot of that's why you're Jack Big Time Russo, man, the big daddy.
Well, I was in Mississippi. I just moved to Texas 6 months ago. But
You're in
but
Texas. Jeez, you're
but
all
it's
over
the
the place.
South. Same shit, like
Tell me, so loop back into your theater days though, and tell me how, now you're getting back into wrestling, right? Here on the Big Time podcast, we're going to do a cool match. We're about to announce it. Tell me how your theater days and your movie acting and all that sort of thing, how do you see any of that related into the art of pro wrestling? Because to me, they're two in the same, but I've never indulged in what you did. Tell me a little bit about how maybe, if any, they relate.
well, Randall, I was gonna say it relates so much because like I don't know how you feel about this in life, but like I feel like your college degree really shapes the way you view the world, right? So it's like if you were a biology major, you're just gonna think we're all molecular cells on the universe or whatever, right? But like I was
Sure,
an
yeah.
acting major, right? So I'm always going to do life as a
Hmm.
play and characters and what they say and what they want to do, what are their objectives, right? So when I watched wrestling as a kid, and don't get me wrong, I still love this part, right? Like I like the smashing through the tables, the chair shots, the throwing off the Hell in the Cells and stuff like that. But as I get
Yeah.
older, I realized it's like so much more than that. And what I really like more now is like how they come up with these personas and characters. Like I just watched a video the other day how we were talking about Stone Cold was like the millionaire man or something. And like one time
Yeah.
he comes home and is talking to his wife and he's like, "Man, I really need a new name." And she's like, "You better drink your tea before it becomes Stone Cold." And he's like, "That's it." And then
And he was like, "What?
and I
What?"
love that story because it talks about the
Yeah.
pieces of crafting a character. And then he tells, okay, I had the name, right? And then the one guy goes, well, what does Stone Cold mean? He's like, well, I'm not really like sure yet, right? And then he shaves his head. And then he's trying all these different facial hairs. And then he finally comes up with the goatee. He's like, that's it. And then the character
Yep.
booms. So it's
Yep.
really cool because like as an actor, you become a character, you explore it, right? So it's like, what would it be like living in 18th century Russia? Or what would it be like if I was from middle of nowhere, Indiana, Pennsylvania, right? And you see that when they create these characters, like when they first start, they're just feeling it out. They're feeling it out. Okay, how would they react? And then the characters just click one day. Like, and it's just
Hmm.
a magical process, like as an audience member watching that.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, and everything you're saying is kind of how I like when me and my brother talk about wrestling. We always talk about. I think what we don't like to watch is like two guys that we don't really know much about, and they're just having a match. Like, to me, the wrestling is an extension or a tool to utilize getting like more involved into whatever story you're trying to tell. So my fandom, like the way I like to watch wrestling is exactly what you're saying. It's all about the story. It's like, tell me why I like this guy and tell me why I hate this guy and why I really want to see that guy beat up that guy. And then if you can do that and keep these simple storylines together, I always say that when wrestling's really, really good, there's nothing better. And of course, that's coming from a wrestling fan, but I've seen it so many times, man. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen when Ric Flair, who is my man, and he goes ahead and retires for the first time or the second time, whatever. And he has the match against Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania.
Oh, that's emotional,
I mean,
Randall.
But that is so much more than a wrestling match, right? It's a gentleman that has given everything to wrestling, going up against the modern day best wrestler in the world, Shawn Michaels. And it's like, can Rick still hang with the best? And Shawn puts in so much drama with, he doesn't want to end Rick's career because Rick is his idol. And Rick is the reason he got into wrestling, right? So you have this great storyline. So yeah, everything you're saying, man, you bring a really knowledgeable mindset into the wrestling business, because a lot of times when I talk to people that don't watch wrestling or don't know wrestling, they don't get it.
No.
You know, they don't get that part. They're like, well, dude, they're not really competing out there. It's like, no, okay, I know that. We know that. But it's more than that, you know? So you get it, and I appreciate that you get it. It motivates me. And talking to you a little bit, I've realized that, one, you love when Teddy Long comes and what does Teddy
He's
Long
like,
say?
you'll go one-on-one with the Undertaker. That is so classic.
So that's one thing I know that you love, but I also have found out that you love Vince McMahon, don't you? You just love the Mr. McMahon character. Tell me about it, dude.
Randall, can I tell you why I love Vince McMahon so much, right? Now,
You can.
interrupt me at any time if I tell the story wrong, okay? So, what I love about his character was, like, his dad was, like, Vince McMahon always wanted to be a wrestler, right? And his dad goes, no, we're not wrestlers. We're just broadcasters. We're just the business people. We're just this, right? And then I was researching Vince McMahon, and some people say, like, ever since, like, the Montreal Screwjob happened, he was like, they hate me, and I'm going to become this character, and I'm just going to relish in it. And it's so funny to hear the dad saying, like, years ago, like, we can't be wrestlers in this, that. But in my opinion, he became, like, the greatest villain of all time. I mean, the corporation is amazing.
Yeah. And it taps into, again, it's a simple storyline, right? Vince, you know, his business, the WWF at the time, was really falling behind WCW, and things were getting rough. Like, they were cutting costs here and there, and now Brett, who was one of their stars, was getting paid so much money, and then Vince was like, we can't pay you, maybe you should go to WCW, and then the whole screw job happened. But yeah, Vince, the businessman, the smart guy that he is, leveraged that into becoming this big heel. And the guy that you referenced before, Stone Cold Steve Austin, came into play, and they had really the biggest rivalry maybe in all of wrestling, which turned wrestling into what it is today, right? It turned it public and all this sort of thing. So yeah, man, I mean, and I think that when Vince wrestles, it's so entertaining.
Me too!
Like, his facial expressions and his storytelling is so good. And that's why, you know, I thought it would be great if we did Vince McMahon versus Shane McMahon at my favorite, not only WrestleMania, but my favorite pay-per-view of all time, WrestleMania 17. So that's what we're going to do. It's the big time with big time Jack Russo. It's going to be Vince versus Shane. And of course, Mick Foley is the special guest referee to the street fight at WrestleMania 17. And you're such a pro. You already got your Peacock up and loaded and muted. We're at 1 hour, 31 minutes, 30 seconds of WrestleMania 17. But before we press play on this thing, we're going to lead you on in there and tell you just the master. Dude, this is one of the greatest stories leading into a match of all time. I mean, The art, the storytelling, it's all perfect. It's great. I'm being facetious here. This is ridiculous stuff coming into this match, but this is peak Vince McMahon. This is right up his alley. So, Jack, if you don't mind, I'm going to lead you on in there and tell you the story of how we got
Yes,
here.
Randall, do it.
And I appreciate you coming on and appreciate you big time, Jack Russo, being here. And, dude, I don't even know what to say other than I'm just going to start this. Okay, so it all starts December 7th of 2000. Vince McMahon demands for a divorce from his wife, Linda, and live on air, of course, right? And after she had, she defied him because Mick Foley was the commissioner at the time, and she loved Mick, and Vince hated Mick because Mick was taking part of Vince's business, right? He's the commissioner, so Vince has to give up power, and he doesn't like doing that, so he's going to get divorced. God damn it. So 2 weeks later, Vince forces Mick out of the commissioner role and viciously beats Foley on an episode of Raw is War. So Foley being demoted alongside the emotional toll of the divorce turns Vince's ex-wife Linda to turn to medication, and it caused her to be in this comatose state. So now she can't walk and she's in a wheelchair, and they do all these vignettes of her at like a nursing home, and it's just pure gold. But it's also just ridiculous. And this is why it's like, us as wrestling fans, we're the most critical people in the world, right? It's like, well, that doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense. It's like, okay, The Undertaker also threw lightning bolts out of his hand, threw onto the announce table, and blew it up. So come on, it's entertainment. Relax. Okay. With Linda left emotionless and Vince now having 100% power in the company again, Vince finds a new lover in Trish Stratus. But then on February 26, 2001, Vince turns on Trish and dumps dirty mop water and dirt all over her in the middle of the ring. Vince explains to Trish that she's nothing but a toy, and he's sick of playing with her. So Vince is leaning into that heel role. Only him can do something like
And
this.
He does it so naturally. Can we just say, like, it's like he just does it so perfect. Like,
yeah, maybe a little too perfect. Vince explains to Trish, the next week on Raw, Trish begs for mercy from Vince, and Vince thinks about it for a little while, right there in the middle of the ring, and thus makes Trish get down on her knees and bark like a dog in the middle of the ring, like any rational man would, right? I'm kidding. Then on SmackDown, March 8th of 2001, Vince forces his comatose ex-wife to sit in a wheelchair at the top of the stage and watch while Vince aggressively makes out with Trish, right? Only makes sense. The next Raw, Vince books a live sex celebration with Trish, which is cut short. So a live sex celebration, right? Cut short by Vince's own son, Shane, right? So here's where it actually gets good. Okay, we had all the gaga and all the silliness, right? But Shane comes out with the look on his face. You get the idea that he's there to defend the honor of his mother, right? So Shane storms the ring and puts the boots right to his father. The following week, Shane offers Vince a contract for a match at WrestleMania, and Vince signs it. And then Triple H comes out and jumps Shane and beats him all up and down the arena. Next comes one of really the most iconic nights in professional wrestling history. So this is when Vince goes on Raw and announces that he has finally bought his competition, World Championship Wrestling. But on the same night, Shane walks out on WCW Nitro, right, because it's still going on, and says one of the most iconic lines. Yes, the name on the contract reads McMahon, but it reads Shane McMahon, right? So now it's like Shane versus his father, Vince. The two promoters now of the two different wrestling businesses. That's where the thing they're trying to portray, but then also Shane is defending his comatose mother that can't walk now. And Vince is the worst dad in history of ever, anytime dads were ever invented. So later on that same night, Mick Foley, love me some Mick Foley. He returns and explains that before Linda went into this comatose state, he had her sign a bunch of executive orders that allowed him to ref any match he wants at WrestleMania. And that's
like the classic turning point for me personally. Like that's
like why is he putting a bunch of papers? She just got divorced, right? Have some respect. Anyway, so here we go. Of course, Foley picks to ref the Shane versus Vince street fight at WrestleMania 17. So here we go, man. WrestleMania 17, it took place April 1st of 2001. right where you are now, right? The Houston, Texas. It's in the Astrodome. I mean, just under 68,000 fans packed this arena. The show started off with just Chris Jericho defeating William Regal for the Intercontinental Championship. They went 7 minutes in a really good hot start type of wrestling match to kick off the show. That got 2 stars from the Wrestling Observer. I think any good show has a kicker of a main event or of a start to kind of get the crowd going, right? And then we had Bradshaw and Farouk and Taz defeating Bull Buchanan, The Godfather, and Val Venus. That was a 6-man tag. That was a 1.5 stars. And then, of course, Kane defeating Raven and The Big Show. They had a hardcore title match, triple threat hardcore title. They went all around the arena. As a kid, I've watched this match 100,000 times. I just loved it. They did the spot where they threw Raven through the glass, and this is kind of a la ECW. They threw this in there. It was great.
Well, do you know what blows my mind? So funny you mentioned that, because I just watched that recently, too. I mean, if you're a wrestling fan your whole life like we were, the hardcore title feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? Like,
yeah. And this was the era where you could win it or lose it at
literally
any time, anywhere. So you had all those vignettes of people going through and getting doors slammed on them, so they're knocked out. And then there's imaginary referee right there to count the pin. Then we had Eddie Guerrero. He goes against an up-and-coming guy, Test, who I thought had a lot of untapped potential. Unfortunately, we lost both these guys. But that was for the European title that got 2.25 stars. Then we had your boy, Kurt Angle, defeating Chris Benoit. They go 14 minutes and 2 seconds. It gets 4.25 stars, so the Wrestling Observer loved it. 2 guys that can really go. Maybe 2 of the best performers in ring. That's said all the time. Then we had China defeating Ivory for the women's title. They got -1 star from the Wrestling Observer. This is kind of, they only go 2 minutes and 40 seconds. China was kind of in this idea that she wanted to face like men, and I don't know. Little weird. But this brings us to Shane McMahon versus Vince. They're going to go 14 minutes, 12 seconds. Of course, referee Mick Foley in the street fight. It gets 3 stars from the Wrestling Observer. And I could be wrong with it. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's not. I was going to say it was Shane's wrestling debut, but it wasn't. But 2 of my favorite performers, man. I mean, Shane did so much, the bumps that he would take. He was definitely the daredevil guy. And Vince, to his credit, man, dude, like when Vince takes a chair shot or gets hit with a ladder or gets thrown off something, I mean, he goes for it. There's that iconic video, right? I don't know if you've seen it. Just recently, though, Vince is like 70-something thousand years old. And Rob Gronkowski is at WrestleMania this year, right? And he doesn't want to jump off the thing or whatever. And Vince is like, "Oh, I'll do it." Sink. And it's like the best tight end in history does it. And then Vince goes.
And the thing too about that video, he does it like so smooth. It's not like he just falls from the sky. Like he sort of knows how to choreograph. Just, you know what I mean? Like,
God damn it, Gronk. Tom Brady who? And then maybe on any given day, my favorite wrestling match of all time. This match is what I show people that have never seen wrestling. I'll show them this. So Christian and Edge defeat Jeff Hardy, Matt Hardy, Bubba Ray, and Devon. They go 15 minutes, 42 seconds in the best triple threat tag TLC, tables, ladders, chairs, for the tag team titles. This gets 4.75 stars from the Wrestling Observer. I mean, so many great moments in here. Of course, Edge, I don't know if you remember, Edge spears Jeff off the ladder, off the hanging from the belts. Jeff Hardy does the Swanton Bomb through a bunch of tables. Shout out to the BigTime archives. My first episode, I showed my buddy Alex Torres that match, and he was not a wrestling fan, but he couldn't help but smile and have a good time watching it. And that's what it's all about.
And Randall, do you know what's like so crazy about like that particular match too? Like, don't mean to get off topic here, but when you watch that match, you sort of miss the old days where they had actually cameras, because it's like when they would jump off of stuff, you'd see all the lights and like,
dude, that's something I call out all the time, how that was so cool. And nowadays you don't see that, right? Because of just, modern technology. You don't need that
Yeah.
flash. But yeah, the posters, the flash bulbs to any given big spot. Yeah, that was part of wrestling. That was part of the show. And I think like what you said before kind of hit home was, as an audience member, I think you're more involved in professional wrestling than any other sport
Oh,
or entertainment in
absolutely.
history. The best shows to me are the ones that the crowd is like the third man. The crowd is part of every match. You know, they're going crazy, they're chanting. You know, that's why I love wrestling so much, because you know, being a live spectator a bunch of times, I'm part of the show. It's like pretty invigorating.
No, it really
And
is.
yeah. And then we had.
Oh
Oh,
no,
go
I
ahead.
was just gonna
Go ahead,
say
Big
one
Time.
last thing too. I'm super happy we're doing this match too, because like first off, we love Vince McMahon, right? But second off, like Shane McMahon is just such an underrated wrestler. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he's so
No, for
good as a
sure.
wrestler, and he doesn't get enough credit. So that's why I'm happy we're watching this one.
Yeah, and right, we went through all the Gaga and the loops of everything that went into the story. But this is what you were saying before, right? Like we're relating it to your college major, dude. This is the son defending the mother with the disgruntled daughter in the corner of the evil, horrendous father that's having an affair. Like there's so many things going on, but it's such a simple story. That's why it's easy to grasp. And you're like, yeah, I'll sit down and watch this. I want to see Vince get his ass kicked, right? That's what it's
And
all
Randall
about.
too, like it's such a great story, and we're so invested in it because it really is like elements of a Greek tragedy. I mean, those are stories that worked for thousands of years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're still
Dude, this is why I knew it'd be great to have you on. Greek tragedy. We're going out there, man. I love it. Big
seriously.
time Jack Russo guys. And Jack, tell me what you think about this, right? So we just had this banger of all these spots and tables and ladders. Now we're gonna slow it down, just like maybe a movie. You have a big, I don't know, a big horror scene, and now you slow it back down, get back in, let the crowd settle down. We got the gimmick battle royal. So this is all the old timers, right? The Iron Sheik defeats guys like Brother Love, the Bushwhackers, Doink the Clown, Earthquake, Hillbilly Jim, Kamala comes back, Cornette's there. So a shout out to the old guys that get to come back and get a little spot, a little shine, get their entrance. But again, let the crowd come down, because right after that, we're going to have The Undertaker defeating Triple H. They go just under 20 minutes, and it gets 3.5 stars. So the Observer loved it. So many great matches on. This is what WrestleMania is all about, right? I mean, just like all these storylines and all these things coming to a head. And of course, how could we forget? Steve Austin defeats The Rock in the main event to win the WWF World Heavyweight strap. It's a no DQ match. Dude, of course, Vince gets involved later in the match again. Austin, this is historically where he turns heel for good or bad reasons. But if you're watching this and you've never seen this match and you have a subscription to Peacock, get your Peacock out, okay? Excuse me while we whip this out. And watch the entrances of The Rock and Steve Austin on full volume and tell me this stuff's fake. I mean, the crowd rumbles for this, and when Austin's music hits, it's the biggest pop to me in wrestling history. It's my favorite pop of all time. The crowd goes crazy. The crowd also loves The Rock. It's a great match.
And
So that was the
just to
headline.
add to that, like I always thought Stone Cold had the best pops. Like, do you remember when he was injured the one time and it was Mick Foley versus The Rock, and he comes out totally surprised? That pop is so huge, and he chair shots.
When Foley wins the belt, yep. That whole era was freaking awesome. And dare I say, we're not there now, but like you also love Roman Reigns and what he's doing. Like, I don't know if you catch any of AEW, but I mean, the wrestling isn't Attitude Era-esque, but we're getting back there. There's so much good stuff that happens every week, and it's, wrestling's back, man. And whether we love it or hate it or we're critical of it, it's just, I'm happy that there's so many shows to watch, and as a wrestling fan, it's cool to see. So, Jack, I don't know, man. I mean, we're in there. We're all let up. Are you ready to press play?
I'm ready.
And And just be prepped. I have a favor to ask you as soon as you
Okay.
press play. But anyway, 1 hour, 31 minutes, 30 seconds, WrestleMania 17 from 01, Shane versus Vince. Big time Jack Russo in the building. The Big Daddy. Are you
I'm
ready?
ready.
All right, 3, 2, 1, play.
All right, I just play.
Now, Jack. First wrestling match me and you are going to sit down and watch together. We got Shane in the ring, Howard Finkel, one of my favorite announcers, and of course Mick Foley. And now we're getting a shot of some WCW wrestlers that are up in the stage or up in the crowd. When Vince's music hits, I need you to sing it. Okay, I need you to sing Vince to the ring. And I know you got it in you.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready for it. Let's go. Big time Jack Russo.
Oh my God. It even had so much swag too.
What's his wrestling theme song? Come on, Jack. Sing
Okay,
it.
the first
Sing
few
them
lines
down
I
there.
forget, but it's like, you've got no chance. No chance in hell. You got. And Randall,
That's
I hate
perfect.
to geek out, right? But it's like, we're talking about how they craft these characters and like the entrance music's got to be perfect. And I always thought Vince McMahon, I don't know how he thought of it, but his song just fit him so perfectly. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, the entrance is like an underrated part of your character, and it's an extension
yeah.
of your presentation. And yeah, the no chance in hell. That was, that's Vince versus the world. It's my way.
Literally, like, I'm this big corporation and I, like, you know what I mean? It's my way or the highway.
Vince stomping into the ring. I mean, the little things, right? Like, this is a movie playing out. He stomps into the ring. He's showing that he's going to whip his son.
Well,
Dad's going to show you what's up. Look at Vince, man. He looks great.
and Randall, it's so important. Those, like, the thing I love about wrestling, it's those little pieces of acting too. Like, not to be random, but like, what about when Randy Orton like RKO's someone and he looks at the crowd like all menacing? Like, it's those little things like stopping the audience. Oh, it starts.
Yeah. It's all about those little things. And Vince throwing some questionable punches there at Shane, but Shane's selling it well. Think about it like this, Jack. It's like, I always say, if you took a steel chair and you hit the steel steps, it makes a loud sound.
Yeah.
Right? But the steps don't show no emotion. It's when you hit a human being and it makes a loud sound, and then the human uses his facial expressions to express the fact that he's in so much pain, but he's fighting through the pain to keep going. Right? He's being courageous, and the crowd can show some sympathy to him or whatever. That's what it's all about. It's about these little things. And I think in today's wrestling, we need to get back to the little things. We always see the big top rope spots. And I say this, I think, every podcast, but it's like, yes, I love matches like this, at a big pay-per-view that have these big spots. And we're going to see some big spots here. But the basics, and Stephanie has a daddy's girl. She was so good too. She was great.
She was fantastic.
Shane throws a pretty stiff elbow to his father.
And then, like, Randall, like, another thing that's just so good is just like, look, she just slapped him.
The brother and the sister fighting. Everyone can get that. Look at Shane with the big drop kick, baseball slide. And, dude, we're going to see one of the biggest pops to a simple human movement in this match. If we were watching it with the volume up, you'd be like, I can't believe what I'm watching, and these people are going crazy about it. And it's pure storytelling. And you'll see when we get there.
And Randall, like, it's so silly too. Like, we were just talking about the baseball slide, right? And this is another theatrical thing. It's like when they make these characters, they have a wrestling style that fits the character. Like him wearing the baseball jersey. Of course, he's gonna do like the baseball slide, or like Ric Flair was dirty, so he would do the dirty moves. You know what? Like,
exactly.
Pieces to it, like
exactly, and that's exactly what I mean. Dude, you're a smart guy. When the wrestling is just an extension, it's a tool to get your character.
That's it.
It really is. I really don't turn on the TV to watch a wrestling show. I kind of turn it on for the storytelling and the entertainment aspect, really. Now, I will say, there was a time period where I thought when it was just WWE for a while, wrestling did get a little boring. It was the PG era. I understand all of that, right? You had the father and the wife bring in the 4 kids, and they all bought John Cena wristbands and T-shirts, and they made a boatload of money. I get it, but I do respect the fact that when shows really still do play into the live crowd, they do some cool things. So it's a mixture of both.
And Randall, like, I can't say I went to one WWE match. This was a long time ago when I was like 8 years old, and like I can't say I was never at these big matches and stuff like that, but we talk about how invested the crowd is, right? Now, granted, I've never been to like an NFL playoff game or a World Series. Like, I've been to baseball and NFL games, but these crowds just seem to get so into it. Like, I remember being at like a Steelers game and they were sort of like into it, but like meaning what I'm saying, wrestling is so into it and it's just so beautiful. Seriously, like look, we're getting to it now. Like, this is amazing, like.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I always say. It's like, I get it, you're not a wrestling fan, but come to a live show. Just come to one and tell me like you didn't have at least a little bit of fun.
Totally. I love it.
This is how I wake up every morning, Jack. This is me brushing my teeth every morning. Shane putting it on his father. Vince, look at the sell job by Vince.
He's doing a great job. And Randall, I don't know how you feel about this. Like, there's some great technical wrestlers who are fantastic wrestlers, but sometimes the over-the-top, like him dancing, is what really is really good too. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, and it's just like, take a guy like the Undertaker. You're gonna face the one-on-one with the Undertaker. It's like he doesn't just get knocked down and then get up. Like, he does the whole sit-up.
Yeah.
And then his eyes roll back, and then he stands up and he stalks you like a Michael Myers character, right? Everything is calculated. I mean, we're seeing big monitors. Vince is laid out against the Spanish announce table. I think every big pay-per-view in this era, the Spanish announce table we got to get rid of that thing. Now, look at this. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think the crowd's ever seen anything like this.
I mean, Randall,
look at Shane. Look at the crowd come up. Look at him. We're going to see the flash bulbs here. I'll lay out for this spot. Look at this.
Oh, my. Oh.
Pulls the dad out of the way, and Shane takes a brutal bump.
And Randall, can I say one thing about Shane McMahon? He just had the air. Like, I don't know. He just, like, was able to fly.
Great athlete. I mean, so I don't know if it was that elbow spot, but, and of course, I'm comparing him to Michael Jordan. I'll slow down, but MJ had the jump man. Shane had the iconic elbow that we just saw. It was almost the same. Look at that.
And
now,
the reason,
Jack, go ahead.
No, I was going to say,
you're big time.
And the reason I was going to say too is like, okay, some people jump, and I know this sounds weird, but it sort of looks clumsy in the air. He is just like so smooth, like it's just like a missile going where it's got to go. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and I think as a wrestling fan, my opinion on those big spots, those big moves like that, it's a fine line, right? You got to make it not look clumsy or not spectacular, right? Someone has a sign that just says hog. You got to make it not look clumsy, but you can't make it look too choreographed or too perfect. You got to make it look offensive. And guys like Shane and Rob Van Dam, I always go back to. Like, those guys made it look smooth and everything was good, but it looked like it hurt. It looked offensive. So it's a fine line.
And Randall, not to talk too much about theater, but like they would always say, like on the stage, you got to move with intent. You can't just move just to
right.
And it's like when Shane McMahon and people like Rob Van Dam, when they jump, it's like they're jumping with an intent. Like, I'm gonna land on this guy. Whereas sometimes I sort of feel like there's wrestlers, I sort of feel it like I feel like he's just going the top turnbuckle because it's something to do and not necessarily just land on the guy.
Yeah. So look at the storyline playing out. So if we flash it back, right? If you notice, Vince didn't just get himself off the table, right? Stephanie helped her father get off the table. Shane's knocked out. And now we have Trish carting the comatose Linda, who can't even think for herself. She's been through so much. And Trish finally turns on Vince, and now she's turning on Stephanie. She's had enough. And look at Foley. Foley's like, what should I do here?
I sort of feel like he's watching as an audience member, like, this is cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Foley's so good. Look at how good Stephanie is. I mean, look at Mick.
And Randall, do you know what's something funny about wrestling? There's just something about the slaps. You know what I mean? Like, there's just something about them.
It shows a fight, right? It shows real intent. Or
yeah.
You know, I'm so frustrated with you that I'm going to slap you in the face. Now look at Trish is going to punt Stephanie out of the arena. So Trish gets the babyface turn, and the crowd pop. Look at the crowd, man. Look at how many people. And now look at the facials on Vince here as he looks. He's disgusted. It's you.
And she's just sitting there in the wheelchair.
And I mean, I'm a 6-year-old kid. Like, what am I watching?
Yeah.
Like, Dad, are you sure I can watch this stuff? Yes, I'm done.
And Randall, that's just the funny thing about, like, us becoming older watchers. Because when we were kids watching this, it was just about the wrestling, you know? But now we're talking about, well, it's actually the story that makes it so good. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Yeah, and you were saying, you know, as a kid, you of course, and the wrestling business is still portrayed for kids. Like, I still think that's where it starts. It's like, it's for the 8-year-old that is like, he loves the superhero and he hates the bad guy, the villain. But you were saying, you know, you grew up kind of like that, but now watching it, you kind of love the heel work by these guys.
Oh,
the bad guys. Tell me a little bit about that.
And then, Randall, I was going to say, hate to interrupt real quick, but the chair shots are just so vintage in WWE. Like, they're just so classic.
Yeah, man. I mean, of course, the head trauma is not a good thing. We know that now, but the chair shots back in the day, I mean, it was the biggest pop you could get. I mean, it was the most devastating thing.
And Randall, can I tell you the one thing that the chair is...
Look at Vince. He's just putting his wife. She's selling it.
Like, the chair is such an iconic weapon because every time you heard it, the sound of it as an audience member, you're like, oh, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like...
Well, and that's a good point. Like, when you're there live, the chair shots are crazy, obviously, but when you hear the chops across the chest, you're like, oh my God. Like, I didn't know it was that real. Now look at Vince. You're going to watch me beat up your son.
And look at how much storytelling there is just right there, putting the chair in the corner like that. You know what I mean? Like,
yep. She can't move.
And Randall, we haven't said it yet, but Shane's been out for a while now, like a couple of minutes,
yeah,
you know?
Shane's letting all the theatrics play out here. And now
trash can is so classic, Randall.
I'm taking the trash out. God damn it. You're fired.
The trash can is just classic.
Jack, tell me, I know, of course you love Vince. Tell me maybe if you could name like 3 of your all-time favorite wrestlers that you really as a kid, like, just grew up loving or hating. What were
okay.
Who were they?
We can't be influenced by our views now, like as a kid, right? So of course, like as a kid, you gotta love Stone Cold and The Rock. I mean, I still love those guys, but you gotta love them, right? And then I remember as a kid hating Edge. I feel like we all hated Edge, you know?
Hell yeah, he was such a good
heel.
When he was going up against Cena. That was.
And then what about how he always cheated, like the Money at the Bank when the guy's already beat up? You know,
that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about.
And then another thing too is like, I used to love Rob Van Dam, but he just never caught.
Now look. I don't mean to.
No,
cut you
totally.
off. Look it. Linda gets up, and look at the crowd. They go absolutely crazy.
Oh,
And now she's going to lay one in there. Look at the crowd. So a woman stands up out of a chair, and the crowd goes absolutely ballistic. That's never been done before and never been done since. And now Foley is getting in there. Finally, he's letting Vince get what's coming to him, laying him out in the corner, and we're going to set up the biggest spot in this match. This has never been done, and you just referenced Rob Van Dam, right? So that leads us in. Rob Van Dam made this move famous in ECW, and now Shane is going to literally steal it, and put it in front of the grandest stage of them all and let all of the world see this. Look at Shane.
Randall, it's so funny you say that. I was literally going to say that, and Shane's just about to take this move, and he performs it so beautifully. Like, he executes it. You know what I mean?
And look, he's like, okay, he puts Vince's hand there, like, hold the trash can up for me, Dad, please. While I climb to the other side of the ring. Now, look at this. Jack, tell me your thoughts on this.
Oh, my God. Here it is, Randall.
Dude.
Oh my God.
Dude, Flashbulb City. The coast to coast. Linda loves it. Vince is getting what he deserves. Pulls Vince into the middle of the ring. Foley, the 1, 2, 3. Dude, look at the crowd.
Dude.
For two guys to go out there that are not wrestlers to put on a performance like that is truly exceptional. I mean, just basic storytelling, but they got it right. I mean, it couldn't have gone better.
And Randall, I gotta tell you one thing that's so funny. As a kid, I didn't think that move was a big deal with the trash can, right? But when you look back as an adult, the ring is long. Like, I don't think I could have been able to, like, now I'm not a pro wrestler, but I don't think I would have been able to reach the trash can. Like, the ring, like,
yeah, you could. Russo, you're big time Jack Russo, dude. You're the big daddy. You get it.
You know what I mean? Like, as an adult, you're like, wow, how he did that's unbelievable. It's such an iconic moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, a moment that will stand forever. Again, this is the best pay-per-view in wrestling history, I think. Just like any great movie, it has its high spots, it has its lulls, it has its action, it has all different types of wrestling.
And even, like, we got to mention this right here, too. Like, she's being carted in a wheelchair. Now she's walking out. Like, talk about a transformation character within.
It was all a plan.
Yeah.
Against the boss. Look at this. Now, I don't know how you work a nut shot. I don't think you do. I think you just hit it.
I think so. I don't think you can really, you know what I know?
Vince can't believe. Oh, Jesus.
Oh, here it is. The good shot. Here it is.
The big time replay.
Oh.
Oof.
And Randall, it's so funny to me when people are like, oh, wrestling's fake. I'm like, okay, it's choreographed, but you can't tell me that doesn't at least hurt. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's tough to explain it to people, but people really don't, especially even back in this era. These guys were like, this takes place on a Sunday night. The next Monday, they're already back on Monday Night Raw doing the thing to promote the whole next year of wrestling. It's a nonstop business. And those guys, yeah, man, I mean, maybe the most brutal business in the world. And of course, those guys, you know, when I meet them sometimes, you can kind of tell, like, they just look different. They look beat up. They're just different. You know, they don't get any sleep. And yeah, it's a very physical, demanding business, obviously.
Oh, yeah. And then, like, Randall, like, it's so funny you say that, too. Like, even if you look at Shawn Michaels now, like, he looks like a totally different person. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go through all that stuff and not have it affect you. I mean, it's physical, emotional. A lot of these guys give up their families. They give up everything to pursue their dream of being the best professional wrestler they can. And if I could go back to any show ever, it would be to be there live. It would be.
I think that's like a no-brainer. Like, I would do the same exact as your decision. Like, this WrestleMania is just amazing.
Yeah, it's never been Trump before and since. But that's why this stuff is so fun, going back and reliving childhood memories. But dude, Jack, it's been a pleasure, man. I can't express how much I appreciate you coming on. I hope we can do it again. You're a podcast central. You're big time Jack Russo, the Big Daddy. Jack, any last words, man? I really appreciate
Randall,
it.
I was gonna say you're the big timer, man. This was fun. You have no idea how much of a pleasure this was. I had so much fun. I mean, it went by so fast. Like it's like sort of
I know.
sad, you know.
Well, hey, the good thing is we could do it again. We could do it plenty of times. Maybe I get a couple more dudes on here and get you on as well. And again, dude, I appreciate you coming on, giving me some of your time. That was fun. Coming off the heels of, John Jones won the UFC title last night. That was a big time fight. But nothing gets more big time than Jack, Big Daddy, Big Time Russo, dude. Jack, I appreciate it, man. Have a good
Randall,
one.
it was such an honor once again. Thank you so much. It was a blast.